recording has started. Good evening, everyone. This is Flagler Weather Info. This service is provided by Flagler County Assist, and this is the special weather briefing regarding the nor'easter and the unsettled weather that we're dealing with here in Flagler County. So this is not one of our regular weather briefs that we do twice a week. This is focusing on this weather system that we've got going here. So it's not tropical in nature or anything like that. It does have a tropical connection, though. We'll talk about that in just a minute. So we do have a front that's kind of stalled off to the south here and weak low pressure trying to develop along it. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But notice that there's a good flow from the east to the west here. And that's because there's high pressure to the north and there's low pressure to the south, and we're kind of caught between the two, and that is giving this good southeasterly flow, and that's causing some problems here. That's causing some of the tidal flooding we got going on, and it's going to potentially give us a lot of rain as well. So I also noticed too that you see these higher level clouds, they're kind of going the other direction, and so when you get winds going two different directions in the atmosphere, that can actually help wring out the moisture in the atmosphere, if you will. It can actually bring some heavier rainfall. So let's just talk about a few things here first. And first thing I'm going to do is we're going to talk about where things stand right now as far as flooding is concerned. And we're going to look at some flood gauges right at this moment. So keep in mind that, the tides matter here. So this is the Bing's Landing flood gauge. And right now we are in a low tide. We're in action stage on the flooding. And we've been touching moderate stage on several of these high tide cycles. And we're on our way into another high tide right now. So this is going back up. I think high tide's like around 11 o'clock or so tonight. I'm not 100% sure in the intercoastal. But if you're in Flagler Beach, if you're on South 23rd Street on Flagler Avenue, some of those places that have that flooding problem, we do have the coastal flood warnings, and you folks will be dealing with it, sadly, some more before this is all over. So right now we're not in too bad a shape, but that water's coming back up. And so what's happening here with these strong east winds, every time there's a tide, it traps the water in the intercoastal waterway. So the wind helps push the water into the intercoastal through the inlets. Then you have a high tide, and then the tide tries to go out, but the wind is not letting it out. Lets it out slowly, but not really efficiently. So then while that water's trying to get out, the next high tide's coming in and the wind's pushing that in. Plus we got King's tides on top of that. So let's go down to Beulah right now, take a look at how things are down there at Beulah Creek, and waiting for that to load up. And we are right at moderate flood stage. You can see the tidal differences there. It looks like we've kind of stabilized there. If you're out on the west side of the county, because there's definitely concerns out there, Haw Creek, Mondex, Daytona North. And right now we are in the minor flood stage. So the coastal flood warning does not apply to Crescent Lake or those areas right now. They could add it to it later, but it does not include those areas at this point. So we're at minor flood stage out there on Haw Creek. And taking a look at Shell Bluff here. And by the way, if anybody has any questions, drop them in the comments. We'll go back after we're done and answer those if I can't answer them straight off here. So we're at minor flood stages, Shell Bluff too. So the main concern is over here on the beach side. And let's go ahead and get back to the weather briefing, and we will talk about what the National Weather Service is saying about all of this. So moderate to minor tidal flooding through the entire weekend. Coastal flood warning is in force now. Moderate tidal flooding impacts are expected within the St. Johns River Basin and coastal northeast in Florida and intercoastal waterway. Coastal flood advisory in some other locations, chiefly in southeast Georgia. That doesn't really apply to us. Our main thing we got going on is right here, and we'll get into the details of that. So, of course, it's a given that we have dangerous beach and marine conditions through early next week. High rip current risk will stay with us. Coastal wind gusts up to 40 miles per hour will be possible. That's gale force by midday through the evening each day. Locally heavy rainfall and flood risk through early next week. Waves of heavy downpours are expected. Maybe a few thunderstorms thrown in for good measure, and localized flood risk at coastal, normally flood-prone, low-lying locations. Again, if you're in one of those places that has problems with flooding, take your precautions. You want to be ready. And we're already starting to see high water in some places right now. So coastal flooding, coastal flood warnings are in force right now. And this is the areas that they impact. Now, it looks green from I-95 to the coast. It does not mean that that entire area is going to flood. Just to be very clear on that. The impacts from this are very localized, but they are very impactful for the people that have to deal with it. So but you notice right now that coastal flood, that warning also, it's out here in St. Johns River, but they've not applied it to the Flagler County side of the lake just as of yet, but they could possibly do that later on. And coastal flood advisors on either side. So the coastal flood warnings are basically running from Jacksonville to Flagler Beach, including Palm Coast, including if you're immediate canal side in Palm Coast, you're seeing some of that high water. If you are immediate intercoastal side in Flagler Beach, you're seeing that high water. So risk of heavy rainfall. So that is going to be with us as we go through the next few days here. And right now we're in marginal risk, and they could possibly upgrade. There's a little bit higher risk as flash flooding to our south, but we're going to stay in that marginal risk level through the next few days here due to that potential of heavy rainfall. So I do have some rainfall estimates here, but I'm going to jump to the latest one. This is the latest rainfall estimation. This is 7 days. This takes us from now through Friday, 6 to 8 inches, pretty much a good chunk of the county. Maybe 8 to 10 inches in the southeast part of the county here. Localized amounts may be quite a bit higher. And again, this is 6 to 8. This is 6 to 8 inches. This is 7-day rainfall. So let's narrow it down a little bit for the next 2 days. This takes us into Sunday afternoon. We're looking at inch and a half, 2 inches. So that's really not that big of a deal if it comes over a couple days. Now, if you get 2-3 inches in an hour, then you're going to have some problems. So we get into 3-day range now, 4 to 6 inches. This takes us into Monday. So 4 to 6 inches of rain, 3 to 4 inches of rain, quite large, quite widely. Some areas of 4 to 6 inches through Monday. Then as we get into Tuesday, now we're talking 6 to 8 inches. So you can kind of see where they're thinking where the bulk of the heaviest rain is going to occur. Now we're going to take a look at wind gusts here real quick, and we can take a look at that as far as the concerns for wind gusts here. So tomorrow we're looking actually pretty much a breezy day across the entire county. Peak gusts 30 to 32, 33 miles an hour. But with that being said, there could be gusts higher than this. This is the average gust expected. That's for Saturday. For Sunday, we're still staying quite breezy there, especially right along the beaches there. So as we go through the rest of the week, we still stay rather breezy through the week, maybe coming down, then as we get towards maybe Thursday, now we're gusting up to approaching gale force here. So it's going to be a breezy week, folks. And so that's going to sadly keep our tidal situation, a problem. So let's talk about tidal flooding now. So this is a viewer that you can get to online. It's called the NOAA Sea Level Rise Viewer. And you can use it to see what sea level rise is going to look like in a particular area. It's also a great resource for seeing what tidal flooding is going to look like. And so right now, this is where the water would normally be normally. So we're in Flagler Beach. This is South 23rd Street right here. And this is Flagler Beach, State Road 100 and all that. And the water's pretty much staying right where it needs to be. So now if we bring this up to maybe 1 foot above the highest tide. So this would be, imagine the highest tide that you could get, and imagine another foot of water on top of that. So now we're still staying pretty dry in many areas. We can see the marshes and stuff starting to flood. So if we get up to 1.5 feet above that highest tide, let's go to 2 feet above the highest tide. And so this is 2 feet above the highest normal tide. And you can see now Flagler Ave is flooding. And keep in mind that there's some elevation that this map does not account for. So if you see water, it doesn't mean it's water over the roof of your house or anything like that. It just means that land is going to have water on it somewhere. So as we go up through Flagler Beach, this is, again, 2 feet above the highest tide. And you can see some parts of Flagler Avenue may flood from that. Not flood that much, but flood enough. So you could get some water on Flagler Avenue there. North Flagler Avenue looks like it stays dry largely. Getting up into Beverly Beach, it's another spot where we have some problems. And you can get some water on this one little road, Intercoastal Drive here on the backside of Beverly Beach with a 2-foot tide in the Intercoastal Waterway. Again, 2 feet, we're talking about 2 feet above the highest tide that you regularly get. That's what this is. So imagine your highest tide that you regularly get, and you add 2 feet to it. So that's just what the National Weather Service is forecasting. They're actually forecasting 2 to 3 feet. So we're going to go up to about 3 feet to show you what that looks like if it gets this high. We don't know if it's going to get this high, but if we got a 3-foot tide in the Intercoastal Waterway, South Flagler Avenue in the area of 23rd Street is pretty affected. Daytona Ave in a few places also affected. Some of these areas down here, some of these neighborhoods down here, our Lakeside Drive and places like that are also impacted. So this is the main problem area. And it's just because it's very low here. That's what's causing that. And some other locations, South Flagler Avenue here may have some problems and such. Are we going to have a 3-foot tide in the Intercoastal Waterway? That's the highest it possibly could get. According to the flood warning from the National Weather Service, if we go back here and we look at that, and there's talking tide inundations of 2 to 3 feet. So that's possible. So if you live in any of these areas that see flooding during nor'easters and things like that, we're not going to see like Irma. We're not going to see that. We're not going to see Matthew. We're not going to see anything like that at all. But if you flooded in that nor'easter we had in November a few years ago, if you flooded in that, you're probably going to have some issues with this. So, but that's Flagler Beach, and it's going up the way here because the coastline's up pretty high. You don't really have too many other problems going up elsewhere to Intercoastal. You see, look in Palm Coast, we're not having problems up there. The only other areas where the land is kind of low is up here in the very north part of the county. But again, we don't have anything getting into any populated areas. It's Flagler Beach. Up at, Marine Land, you could get a little bit of water around the lagoon there. But it's Flagler Beach where those problems lie, especially on the south side of Flagler Beach. So again, we'll have to see if it gets up that high. We just don't know if it will. They are forecasting 2 to 3 feet above the highest regular high tide. So we're hoping that it doesn't get that high, but just be prepared just in case it does. So that's the main concern. Again, you can see this is localized. It's only affecting very small parts of the county, but it's very impactful to those folks that possibly may be impacted by that tidal flooding. So, Central Avenue, places like that are up pretty high. You're okay. But again, that South Flagler Avenue is where we're going to see some of those problems. And that's with the high tide cycles. Keep in mind that the tide in Smith Creek here is about 5 to 6 hours off from what the ocean is. So if you have an ocean high tide, this is about 4 to 5 hours, sometimes 6 after that high tide. So anyways, I'm going to wrap things up, but I just wanted to talk about that. These conditions are expected to go through the weekend. And taking a look at the tropics real quick, because we do have some activity going on there. This is the system that the National Hurricane Center is watching. It has a low but 10% chance of development as it moves towards Florida, but it's encountering a lot of upper-level winds and stuff, so it's going to have a hard time getting organized. But low pressure to the south, high pressure to the north is going to make it for breezy conditions and unsettled conditions for us here in Flagler County. The next system is coming off of Africa. When it reaches this location in about 5 to 7 days, it has a medium chance of development. We got a lot of time to watch that one. It's way too early to be worried about it, but we're going to see lots of these through the hurricane season. But there's a medium chance, about a 50% chance of that one getting organized somewhere in this area here once it gets clear of Africa. So the conditions will be favorable for that. And again, we will watch the subsequent updates from the National Hurricane Center. So, and that's going to pretty much wrap it up. Again, looking at satellite imagery here, you can see that flow. You can see that all those little showers blowing in. And again, those stiff onshore winds, that's causing the flooding. So we got the king tides on top of it. But those onshore winds forces the water into the inlets. That forces the water into the Intercoastal Waterway. You have a high tide. And when that tide starts to go out, the wind doesn't let the water out. And then another tide comes in on top of that. And that's our main problem with the flooding. So anyways, everyone out there, have a good evening. We will be doing updates off and on as needed and as our staff allows. We are a volunteer-run page. We are supported by Flagler County Assist, and there's about 5 of us that run the page. So we will do updates when we're able to do it. Again, I encourage folks to follow official sources. Again, like the National Weather Service, this is the best source here. Weather.gov/JAX. Again, weather.gov/JAX. This is where all your official information is. This is where you can go get the latest. Everybody out there, be safe, have a great evening, and we'll probably do an update tomorrow.